Good morning, good evening, and good day. Welcome to Global E-commerce Experts, and welcome to another episode of the Expander series designed for e-commerce sellers and Amazon sellers around the world. Really excited today because today we are looking at 5 top tips for growing and expanding your Amazon business in Q1 2024. And I'm delighted to be joined by Fatos Fatin from Maximize, one of the world's hottest listing exploder agencies, dealing with content listings and videos. Anything that's to do with storefront and A+, Fatos is an absolute guru. So welcome, Fatos. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Ricky.
So we're going to talk a little bit today about 5 quick-fire tips for changes to the back and the front end from an Amazon perspective for sellers for Q1 2024. So these are sure to be useful for any seller, especially internationally. Some of the bits and pieces that we'll be talking about later are for UK sales. Some of them will be more globally related. So let's get started, Fatos, and talk through your top 5 Q1 tips.
Okay, great. So the first one, which is really exciting, is that when you've got Premium A+ content on your listing, the comparison chart, and there are now a range of different comparison chart options. Comparison chart 1 actually allows you to click and add to cart straight from the A+ content, which is fantastic. So, you know, previously you could see things, you could see different products on the comparison chart, but it was just, it was static. So now you can see the yellow add to cart buttons on this slide. Basically, you can just go click there, you add to cart, you buy it, and you can go to the checkout from A+ content. You don't have to scroll back up the listing and then add to cart further up. This is a fantastic feature because you know, conversion rates, it can double conversion rates. It's fantastic. You know, shoppers can see some of your different products, so there's more of a chance of cross-selling. They're going to buy more than one product. So it's a great way of increasing sales overall. And stats are showing that 25% of customers who click on shoppable Premium A+ content comparison charts, so if they're looking at it, 25% of them are actually going to buy from there. So wow. It's fantastic. It's really powerful, and this is it sort of ties into the whole idea of Premium A+ content, which I've been banging the drum about for a little while now. It is so powerful, and every day there are new features being added, and I really urge any brand owners who, if they're not using Premium A+ content, to get on and do it.
So, and the contents comparison, is that the same A+ content, or is that different?
No, so this is when you're on the A+ content on a listing, there is a comparison chart module that you can add to your A+ content, and there are various different types of comparison chart that you can use, but the one that's comparison chart 1 has this feature where, as you can see in the slide, you know, you've got different products sold by the brand. You can see them. It's actually now showing within this new updated module. You know, you can straight away see the review rating. You can see how many stars. You can see the actual price of the product. Everything is at a glance view. And if you decided that you want to buy any of those products that are there that are available, that have that add to cart button, you know, if they're not available, if they're out of stock or something like that, you won't be able to buy it. But if they are available to buy, then you can literally just click add to cart from A+ content.
Fabulous. It just makes life so much easier.
Yes, yeah, and it helps us sell more.
So are you going back through existing listings and adapting these now?
Yes. So premium A plus become much more easily accessible now to brand owners. Previously, you had to have, I think it was 15 approvals of A plus content before you could have access to it. It's now only 5, as long as you've got brand story applied to all your ASINs. It's very easy for anyone who's a brand owner. It's very easy to have access, to be eligible. So if you've got existing A plus, upgrade it, definitely. And if you haven't got A plus at all, you should have it.
And what proportion of people are using premium A plus
I don't,
in your experience?
to be very honest, I don't have a number. I don't know what percentage are using it. We are seeing it more and more, but a lot of brands are still using basic A plus content.
Okay, well, there we go. Top tip number 1 for Q1 2024, comparison
Yeah.
chart 1, premium A plus content. Thank you. That's a good start.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on.
Next one. This sort of news item came in from Amazon. Basically, it's sort of taking control away from sellers, because anybody, other sellers or Amazon, can go in and change the images on your listing without you knowing about it. And the reason that this might happen is if you haven't got the right required images on your listing. So the 3 main requirements to be compliant with their listing image requirements is that you must have your main image on a white background. That's the first requirement. The second is that you need to have lifestyle images. So you need to be showing the product in an environment, in which it would typically be used. And the other one is that you have to have infographics showing size and fit information. So let's say, for example, you're selling a photo frame, and in your whole image stack, there isn't an image that shows the dimensions of the frame. Then somebody else may well come in and add that image into your listing without you knowing about it. So the upshot of all of this is that as sellers, we all need to be making sure that our listings are optimized. If you've got the right images, then you're not going to risk this happening to your listing. But if you haven't, and somebody comes in and adds an image over which you have no control, that's going to affect your listing quality. It's going to affect your sales, your conversion. So it's really not worth the risk.
Yeah, I think it sounds like Amazon are particularly pushing now on quality of listings, across the board. And these are 2 really good examples of, the effect that can have, and how you can't do a mass update, and you really need to be quite careful with listings, especially if you've got big async catalogs. That there could be some real howlers lurking in there, couldn't there? So taking care with the way that those are being looked after. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 there on listing quality.
This one again is to do with your content. So we know that A/B testing is something that everybody should be doing. And Amazon are increasing the number of different things that you can A/B test. And one of the new additions is that you can A/B test your brand story. And that's great, because your brand story is something that you can change very easily, very quickly. It's not very complicated. And so say, for example, it's peak season for, let's say it's Mother's Day or Valentine's Day or the holidays. You can change it and you can test it very easily. And also, if you've got a new product that's launching and you want to highlight it a bit more, draw a bit more attention to it, you can change it. You can A/B test it. So yeah, brand story also now you can A/B test it. And actually, this wasn't the sort of third one. I was specifically talking about brand story, but you can also now A/B test multiple things at the same time. So whereas previously you could only do one, now you can test for multiple different attributes simultaneously.
And how does that work in real life? How long are you running the A/B testing for, and what are the outputs from those?
You can decide how long you want to run them for. So you can actually choose how long you want to run them for, but you do need to give it a bit of time to work. So, I would say don't run it for 2 weeks and switch it off, because that's a very short time frame. You do need to let it run for a little while.
Okay, so more like a month.
A month, 6 weeks, something like that, at least. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's quite a long drawn process if you're testing lots of different things. But like you say, if you can do more than one at a time, you've got some options there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And previously, what was you could only A/B test small amount of things?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you could test your title. You could test your main image. You could test your A+ content. So now you can test more and more and more things. Yeah, pretty much all your content you can test.
So I'm curious what would be the first sort of top 3 or 4 things that you would beyond your brand story. What would be plan 2 and plan 3 and plan 4 in terms of where are the go-to places?
So your main image is really, really important, obviously, because if people are not clicking on your main image, you're not going to get the sale. Your other content isn't going to get a look in. So your main image and actually getting people to come onto your listing is the most important. So yeah, would definitely test your main image.
And in terms of the actual content itself, beyond the image, the written content, are you using any software or AI or any such tools to do that, or are you writing those things manually?
You can use AI to write your bullet points, and a lot of people do. We still do them manually. It's that's just me, but I know a lot of people are using AI to write them.
But there's no Amazon's not penalizing the listings on that basis.
I think they are now cottoning on to stuff that is sort of regurgitated and posted on there, because what a lot of people are doing is they will take all the competition's bullet points, put them into ChatGPT, and whatever it regurgitates, they're putting it on their listing and just kind of using that. And they are cottoning on to that. They are picking up on that.
Okay, well, it's another good reason to have expert assistance on that kind of thing to really really reap the rewards. Okay, so that's good. So tip number 3 was brands on that front. Yeah.
Now we're number 4.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a new one. So in your growth opportunities, Amazon gives you suggestions, and typically that's been like run ads on this product and you could potentially sell this much more. Now there's a new feature that you can use, which is really helpful, which has suggestions as to how you can help reduce customer returns. And returns are a huge on your profit. So anything that you can do to try and reduce them is fantastic. So you can get insights on how much by taking the recommended action, how much that could impact your sales over the next 90 days, or it gives you suggestions as to how you may change your product detail page to try and help reduce returns. Also customer issues, it's sort of giving you suggestions on these are issues that customers are finding. Therefore, if you make these changes, that's going to potentially help reduce your returns. And also just gathering data on the sort of questions that are being asked about your product or similar products in the category. One that I came across for one of my products was that it has a zip on it. And, there was a suggestion saying there have been 11 questions about zip length for similar products. So it's just telling you, if you add this information into your listing, it's going to reduce that risk of having returns, which is great. It's really helpful. So
especially
definitely,
if the tips are already there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of new development just to help sellers sell more. Reduce friction. Reducing friction is a big thing. So, yeah.
Okay, so these whereabouts are these recommendations on the inside Seller Central?
It's in the Opportunity Explorer, and you go into there and you see recommendations. Yeah.
Okay, and is that the
Growth,
only insight?
growth
What sort of insights
opportunities.
are oh, growth opportunities?
Growth
Okay,
opportunities. Yeah.
and do any of these recommendations, are these just content changes, or do they cost money? Or
No, there are lots of different there are lots of different recommendations. Some of them are, advertise this product or enroll this product in Vine, or there are various different recommendations. But this specific one, for recommendations how to reduce returns, is a new one that they've added.
and have you applied any of these to products that you're managing and seen some effect of that?
Yeah, I've applied some of them to my own products and
Yeah.
seen definitely a positive impact from that. Yeah.
I mean, as a manager of two big 3PLs, one here and one in the Netherlands, we see the effect of returns,
It's
on an
huge.
hourly basis,
Yeah.
and it's a big problem area, within e-commerce, especially if you're a seller who's abroad, because of course, then if you've got some slightly
Yeah.
soiled or damaged stock, what are you going to do with that? So there's an enormous amount of waste. And of course, every item, every time you hear the waste word, you hear wasted money as well. So this is a really proactive step from an environmental perspective, from a sustainability perspective, but also just
Yeah.
to save sanity on the bottom line, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And actually, if you've got a lot of different ASINs and a big catalog of things that you're selling, there's an enormous amount of money to be made here, or to be saved
To
here in
save.
comparison, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because every time you get a return, you've got the cost of it being put back in a shelf and relabeled and whatever, and it just adds up. It just comes off your bottom line. So
Yeah. And really, from a buyer's perspective, very few people, or a small segment of people, really want to buy, damaged or used goods. And fundamentally, if it's already been through the logistics supply chain twice, once in and once back out again, once out and once back in again, as it were, there's very little chance of it staying in A1 condition. So
yeah,
that's a really proactive step.
yeah, definitely.
Well, actually, in terms of the environmental and the sustainability side, it actually feeds quite nicely into tip number 5. Now, tip number 5 is specific for UK sellers. For anyone who's been selling in Europe on Amazon, especially in France and Germany over the last few years, you'll have already been well versed on the requirements for EPR, from the extended producer responsibilities. Now, these are, well in range and already working in France and Germany. So sellers there will already be registered. But our Q1 tip is that off the back of Q1 this year, just dribbling into Q2, it's not an April Fool, but on the 1st of April in 2024, the EPR regulations become enforced within the UK. Amazon has got its own route to getting this sorted. So Amazon's got a scheme whereby it's going to collect as an environmental charge on sales for UK sellers. Now, Life is slightly different if you're a non-UK business and you're selling on Amazon in the UK, or if you're a UK business and you're a limited company entity in the UK and you're selling on Amazon in the UK. So I'm going to split those two things up very slightly because there's two different schemes. But this first scheme that I'm talking about here is that Amazon, starting from the beginning of April, is beginning to reserve the right. It probably won't happen immediately. When they say they reserve the right, that's the day that these things are going to kick off. But knowing other schemes that have run through over the course of the last few years, through the course of the kind of the few months preceding that date, Amazon will begin on an account by account basis of reserving the right to charge sellers eco contributions on their sales. Now, this contribution is based on the producer responsibility on the disposal of the packaging. So it will differ depending on your liability will differ depending on what type of packaging you have, whether it's polystyrene or cardboard or plastic, and whether or not your goods are being and even more so if your goods are being supplied in Amazon shipping packaging, or whether it's being supplied in its original packaging. So some details here, but the really important part is that if you don't do anything in the next month or 32 days, after that point, Amazon could well start billing you or adding a charge for the environmental contribution or the eco contribution from that point on. So the tip here is that if you are a non-UK business and you're selling, so if you're a US or a non-native UK business and you're selling on Amazon in the UK, you may well already be registered for EPR if you're selling in France and Germany, if you're a European seller. But if you're selling in the UK, you can do two things. You can opt out of the charge and you can sign up to an EPR specialist. Global e-commerce experts can help you. Avast can help you. Lots of other people on SPN can help you with that registration in terms of your EPR registration. At that point, there'll be a very detailed calculation based on the type of packaging that you've got to give you an indication of what that cost might be. And that generally happens at the point of import. So, and at that point, of course, you can opt out of the charges from Amazon and make sure that you're getting a true indication of your EPR requirements and not pay Amazon's broad brush eco contribution. We don't have any information at this point as to how of that eco contribution is being calculated, but for sellers, the general consensus is that this will be a broad brush approach to the type of packaging that you've got, and therefore there's a good chance that you could save money by registering and handling your EPR yourself. Some of that's going to be depending on how much you sell. For UK businesses, they're already obliged to register if you're selling over a certain amount. So if you sell under 25 tons, which feels quite a lot of cardboard, and also you have more than £1 million worth of turnover in your UK business, then you need to register yourself. And if you're a small producer, you don't need to necessarily register, but you do need to create an account to make that statement. So you have to report that data every 6 months. And again, it's an inexpensive thing to get to have done professionally alongside your tax compliance, for instance, at the point of import to get registered. So the really important thing is if you don't take any action, let's take UK business out of this and just talk about overseas businesses selling in the UK. If you don't do anything, you're going to comply legally, but it might cost you more money than more margin than it might otherwise need to. So through the course of Q1, it's well worth getting onto SPN, finding yourself a good EPR specialist, or just getting in touch with global e-commerce experts, and we can help you and coming to the point of finding an EPR specialist to make that registration for you. It's not an enormous amount of money. It's less than £100 typically for a full 24 container load. So typically, depends on what you've done, but we're not talking lots and lots of money here. But it is a regulation is required from the second quarter of this year. Of course, other countries in Europe are now adopting the same process. The Netherlands and Sweden in particular coming online soon. So if you're a pan-EU seller, this is something you need to switch on to. And of course, your compliance to that will need to be logged in Seller Central in the compliance section. So that's the EPR post, and that's our top 5. But so that we're not sort of shortchanging, we always like to make sure that we give you more. So we're actually going to do 6 and not 5. That's just this is your bonus. Now we put this one in at the end because really everyone who's selling in Europe should know about this now. But there's a deadline at the end of Q1. And this is after all a Q1 tip sesh. So most sellers who are selling in the UK and in the EU will know that they already have to have an authorized representative or responsible person service, as Amazon called it, in place in time for the end of March 31st, 2024. That's because Amazon is ending its own RP service at the end of March. Anyone who was lucky enough to get onto Amazon's RP service right at the beginning, who was already on it, they will now be well versed and already informed by Amazon that that service was ending. But if you haven't done anything about that, it really is quite crucial. We have heard horror stories of sellers being delisted, but the reason for it is that Amazon was being the authorized representative and RP for millions and millions of ASINs across the UK simply wasn't fathomable. And of course, they then took a degree of joint liability for the product compliance. So some sellers have now found that they hadn't quite got themselves up to speed with UK product compliance, or European for that matter. They just filled in, let Amazon be their RP. And now when moving on to another provider for RP, there is some time constraints in terms of getting that done for March 31st. So let's take a look at what that looks like in terms of the impact. So we're talking about the 3Ds for an impact. I mean, we don't want to sound too dramatic when it comes to these things, but much like Amazon reserving the right, it will start working its way through accounts and highlighting and putting some deadlines on deactivation. It's unlikely to happen on the 1st of April. It'll begin on the 1st of April. Typically with these things, you might be unlucky and get an email in the first week of April. You mustn't ignore it, because there are sellers who are and have well been deactivated. And we know that because not all sellers were on Amazon service and had an independent provider of that. And when they've removed that, stopped paying for it, finished that, over a course of time, Amazon has deactivated those accounts to ensure that they are compliant in the region. Now, it is worth noting that it can get really bad if you're an overseas seller and you sell in the UK. It's not just your UK account that can be deactivated. They are chasing right back to central accounts. So US sellers have been deactivated for UK RP non-compliance. It's pretty extreme, and I think there's probably some other naughtiness that's gone on with those accounts as well, if I'm honest. But nonetheless, they of course have the right and the capacity to, if you aren't complying with the terms of service, to do something about that. So what's important to know is that some products might just need a quick update with Inside Seller Central to add your RP. Others might need some product-based changes. They might need an address changed on the package and things like that. Might need some over-labeling. So we've got some answers of what that bit looks like in terms of how to do it. But beyond those pieces, you need to start taking action to find yourself a new RP supplier, make an assessment on what that bit looks like, because you'll need to add a new address and add a new RP into Seller Central. There's some detail there of where you put that. It's in the compliance section, where you, in your manage your compliance area, or the bottom right hand side of the page in the compliance section, you'll begin to see these product compliance requirements notifications popping up. That's probably going to happen from the beginning of April. So keep an eye on what those things look like. But of course, you can appoint an RP authorized representative at any time, and then you'll be able to add the address in, bulk upload those for all of your product listings, and have that certificate put in place. Off the back of that, you of course might need to make some amendments to your products, as I mentioned, if those need to be reworked, especially if they're in a 3PL overseas, or if you're having some more products produced. So there could potentially, for some people, be the perfect storm of activity required to comply here, beyond just needing to add your address into Seller Central. Now, it's also worth noting, just to kind of simmer everyone down if you're getting hot under the collar, that once the address is in Seller Central, and your 3PL is comfortable that your goods are compliant, or if they provide that service, there'll be an element of time when you can change your products over, get them relabeled. We've only very rarely heard of Amazon pulling non-compliant products from their own FBA warehouses. It's quite common in 3PL because, of course, if they're providing the responsible person service, they too have a joint liability for your products too. So that bit might be a case. I mean, we at GE here in our warehouse, we are checking products for compliancy all the time, because we hold that joint liability for the compliance of the products. So it's normally about the address. Typically, it's normally about the address that's on the products, in the event that there's any issues with them. So that one sounds like it could be a big drama for some people, but hopefully for most it won't be. And for most people who would have known about Amazon switching off on the 31st of March, they've long had plenty of time, plenty of notice to do that. But because it was in Q1, we felt that it needed to be tagged onto the end of the top tips for Q1 2024. So that just wraps it up. 6 out of 5 for the extra bonus. Appreciate everybody listening. We will do some more of these over the coming weeks in terms of additional ways to help you expand, as all part of the Expander series from Global E-commerce Experts. If you want to get in touch with Fatos to talk about Storefront and A+, you can see the details there. Fatos, how do you prefer people to get in touch? Email or on your website?
Either is good for me. Yeah, both work.
So I'm sure Fatos will be delighted to help you further with some premium A+, if that's something that's on your agenda. And of course, from GE's perspective, we'd love to help you with your product compliance, with your European expansion all the way across the board. On that note, Fatos, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, thanks for listening. We wish you all the best of luck with your businesses in Q1 and Q2, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show.